we've got some huge news to talk about, some shocking news. News so shocking that the people involved, I don't think even knew about it until it was made public. So we've got to talk about one of the biggest surprises I can remember in recent NASCAR history. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. I apologize for the fact that this video is being uploaded about 24 hours after the breaking news was actually released, but yesterday, unfortunately, I was just extremely busy. I did not have the time to give this topic the amount of energy, the amount of dedication it deserved, so I had to push it to today. But today, I've got a lot to say about the huge breaking news story from yesterday that made all the rounds on social media that everyone is talking about right now, and we're going to talk about right here for about 10 or 15 minutes. I really thought this NASCAR silly season was going to be pretty chill. You know, we already kind of knew a lot of the big rumors. You know, a lot of the rumors were around Eric Jones and Christopher Bell, but we already kind of knew where they were going. You knew that RCR with Tyler Reddick might have some announcements. You knew Matt DiBenedetto might have to go somewhere. So you knew a few of these little things. We've got some crazy announcements. Paul Menard retiring, DiBenedetto taking that ride. That's insane. Didn't expect that. Hemrick gone from RCR completely. Didn't expect that. But now today's news, well, yesterday's news that we're talking about today, might take the cake for most shocking announcement of the year. So let's get to it. Yesterday, Roush Fenway Racing announced that Chris Buescher will be replacing Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the 17 car in 2020. I know, who saw this coming? Pretty much nobody, I would guess. But anyway, let's talk about the details here because this gets really interesting really fast. Apparently, JTG Doherty definitely didn't see this coming. Here's a statement that team put out immediately after the announcement. The president of the team said, "We were in the final strokes of the contract when learning that Chris has gone in a different direction. We appreciate all the efforts from Chris through the past 3 seasons at JTG Doherty Racing. When the dust settles, we will begin the process of searching for our next driver to fill the number 37 seat for the 2020 Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series season." Now, JTG Doherty were the only ones that I think were a little bit surprised by this news. It actually sounds like Chris Buescher kind of didn't see this coming either. So here is his statement he put out. Here's at least a part of it, the most interesting quote. This is how he started his statement. He said, "Recently I was notified by Roush Fenway Racing that they were electing to pick up an option the team had retained for me to drive for Roush Fenway Racing again. And I'm happy to announce that I'll be driving the number 17 Roush Fenway Ford Mustang in the Cup Series for the team in 2020. In the past, Chris Buescher has said that he didn't think he had any ties to Roush Fenway still, but this is why you gotta read the fine print, because apparently they did. Apparently Roush still had an option to pick up Chris Buescher if they so chose. Now, Adam Stern from Sports Business Journal then tweeted this report out that seems to shed some light on what exactly happened. How did JTG Doherty miss on this, and how did Roush Fenway end up with him? Here's what the report said. JTG had an exclusive window to re-sign Chris Buescher to a renewal, but it didn't have the deal signed when the window expired, as it was still finalizing sponsorship, allowing Roush Fenway to pounce. So this is what I'm saying, gotta read the fine print. Once JTG Doherty missed their initial window, Chris Buescher was free to go elsewhere, and Roush Fenway Racing was the team that still had some rights to him, so that's why he's with the 17 car. And now I don't think Chris Buescher's gonna complain here, because I think that 17, as much as it struggled in recent years, I think that's an upgrade over what JTG Doherty has right now, especially given that Ryan Newman's put the 6 car in the playoffs this year. I don't think Chris Buescher's gonna complain, but it is very interesting to see that this all happened kind of out of nowhere, it feels like. And even the fact that Roush Fenway Racing elected to make this move is extremely surprising. You know, as recently as this summer, Ricky Stenhouse, it was reported, had a deal through 2021. It doesn't sound like he was locked in with Roush for a couple more years. But now he's gone. I'll talk about Ricky Stenhouse in a moment. Let's focus on Chris Buescher first. Now, Chris Buescher, he's not new to Roush. He came up through the lower ranks with Roush Fenway Racing largely, and he peaked in 2015 when he won a couple of races and then won the Xfinity Series Championship driving that 60 car. Now, he was a Cup Series rookie in 2016. Roush Fenway Racing loaned him out to another Ford team, Front Row Motorsports. Remember 2016, he actually won that fog-shortened race at Pocono, kind of pulled off the big upset there as a rookie. But then since then, he spent the last couple of years with JTG Doherty, still under Roush control, but just way in the background. He'd been with a Chevy team this year, JTG Doherty. And this year, he's still 20th in points, not an amazing season or anything, but he has outperformed his equipment on several occasions this year. And I think a lot of people would say Chris Buescher's kind of had a low-key breakout season, not like DiBenedetto's had, not quite that to that extent, but he's had kind of just a low-key, pretty solid season. He's surprisingly run top 10, top 15 at some tracks. So now Chris Buescher's moving back to Roush Fenway Racing in the Cup Series this time. Now he's only 26 years old. That's not that old, not a whole lot of experience, but he has run pretty well this year, and I think a lot of people are optimistic that this might be a slight upgrade over there at Roush. I do like that this isn't the case of a driver paying his way into a solid ride. Again, this is Chris Buescher, a guy who you could argue has earned this. He earned it back when he won a championship in the Xfinity Series in 2015. He earned a solid Cup Series opportunity then, in my opinion. Ended up having to race for front row for JTG, trying to make the most of it, and he has. This year he's 20th in points. That's not too bad. He's ahead of Ricky Stenhouse in the points right now. And in that case, I think he has earned an opportunity at a slight upgrade. Again, Roush is not a great team right now, but I'd say they're a slight upgrade over where JTG Doherty is right now. So I'm excited to see a guy like Chris Buescher kind of earn an upgrade based on merit. We saw this happen to DiBenedetto. He's going to be racing for the Wood Brothers, a Penske affiliate next year. He earned that upgrade. Chastain continues to earn new opportunities in the lower series. I think that's why a lot of fans are falling in love with these guys. I've seen a lot of people on social media really excited that Chris Buescher's getting this opportunity because I think a lot of fans are just really hungry to see, consistency, see skill, see talent rewarded. They don't want to see drivers like Daniel Suarez get good opportunities just because they have connections. They don't want to see that. People are tired of that, and I don't blame them. They want drivers to be rewarded based on merit, and that's what examples like Matt DiBenedetto and now Chris Buescher, I think, are. Now, I know a lot of social media is very down on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. A lot of people are kind of celebrating that he's been kicked out of the 17. I don't want to go that far. Obviously, it's called silly season, so it's kind of got a funny woohoo name, but there's nothing funny about losing your job, losing your livelihood, really. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. probably fully expected to be racing next year and in 2021, making the same money, doing the same thing, and now that's not happening. So I don't want to sit here and just pile on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. because he has had some great moments. He's had a couple of the brightest moments for Roush Fenway in recent years. Roush Fenway's been in a dim place for quite a while now, for most of Stenhouse's tenure, and he's been one of the only guys responsible for bringing him out of that at times. So I don't want to be too hard on Ricky Stenhouse Jr. here, but that being said, it was time. It was time for a change. Let's talk about where Stenhouse goes from here because his options are relatively unclear at the moment. He could just straight up trade rides with Buescher. He could go to the 37. That's possible. He could go to that 38 car. Remember, David Reagan's retiring, so we could see Stenhouse go from one Ford team to another Ford team. That's also possible. He could go down to the Xfinity Series. He could be done in NASCAR entirely. He could go race dirt stuff. I don't know. The problem with Stenhouse is he doesn't really bring much of his own sponsorship. Fastenal, Sunny D, Fifth Third, those are really primarily Roush sponsors that Chris Buescher is going to get when he comes to the 17. So Stenhouse, I think NOS might be a Stenhouse sponsor that maybe he'll bring with him wherever he goes. But I think the fact that he doesn't bring a whole lot of his own sponsorship is basically going to eliminate any opportunities at top teams. He's not going to get an upgrade. He's not going to go to a car next year that's better than the 17 was. If he's going to stay in the Cup Series, it's probably going to be at a slightly worse team like Front Row or even JTG Doherty. So that's where Stenhouse is right now. Stenhouse, though, nearly 7 full-time seasons in the Cup Series for Roush Fenway. He does have 2 wins, both super speedways in 2017. He qualified for the playoffs that year. That being said, Stenhouse has been incredibly inconsistent during his Cup Series career. As the story goes, infamously, when he was coming up through the ranks, Jack Roush actually parked Stenhouse for a time because Stenhouse was wrecking too many race cars. When he eventually brought Stenhouse back into the fold, Stenhouse went out and rewarded him by winning 2 Xfinity championships. Stenhouse looked like the real deal. But I will give Stenhouse some credit for this. Stenhouse, I think, joined Roush Fenway at the worst possible time. They'd already lost Mark Martin. They'd already lost Matt Kenseth. He was replacing Matt Kenseth. The only real, championship level veteran driver they still had, you could argue Greg Biffle, but was Carl Edwards. The cars aren't great still, but I think Newman's success this year, putting that 6th car in the playoffs, opened Jack Roush's eyes. I think he thought it was all the cars. I think he thought everything on the car, the technical and mechanical side, needed to be a change. Drivers weren't really the biggest issue, but I think with Kenseth running well last year for a little bit, and then Newman this year especially running really well, I think Jack Roush realized that no, the cars still aren't great, but the drivers could be doing more too, and I think all eyes turned to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. there as a guy who was clearly underperforming in that equipment this year, and that's why they made a change. Is Chris Buescher going to be way better than Stenhouse? No. I don't think he's going to be much better at all, at least not at first. I think over time, though, Chris Buescher does have a much larger upsize because Stenhouse is 31, Buescher's 26, and you could argue this year Buescher's already showing better skills than Stenhouse was, so I think this is a smart move for Roush Fenway Racing. I even talked about this in an episode just last week. I was questioning why Jack Roush was so loyal to Ricky Stenhouse Jr. when we saw at Richmond last week, he took out the leader. He just has so many of those just moments that are inexcusable. It's really, I think it couldn't come any sooner that Jack Roush and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. ultimately parted ways. In a nutshell, I like this change a lot. There really were no other veteran drivers out there that I think Jack Roush could have put in that 17 that was going to elevate this program. There were no other Ryan Newmans on the table. Kurt Busch is locked up over there with the 1. Jimmy Johnson's locked over there at the 48. Who else? Harvick's not going to come over to Roush. Truex isn't going to come to Roush. Nobody else is going to come to Roush Fenway Racing. So I think bringing Chris Buescher in there, a guy who's outperformed his equipment this year and still has a lot of potential and has history with the team. Very smart move from Jack Roush and Roush Fenway Racing. I think this is the best call for them long term. It's a shame that Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is now going to be out of a ride and might be out of the Cup Series next year, but it is what it is. Sometimes it's a business, and Stenhouse had 6.5 years to prove himself and never really did. So I like this change, but I'll be curious to know what you guys think down in the comments. And then I actually did ask you guys on Twitter who you think is going to go to that 37 car. Now that car is surprisingly open. I give you guys a few kind of high profile options. Here was what you guys all said. Had more than 1,200 votes actually. 48% said Hemrick, Daniel Hemrick will go to the 37. 31% said Ross Chastain, and 11% said Ricky Stenhouse Jr. will go to the 37. I kind of agree for the most part. I've heard Hemrick and Chastain's name linked to that 37. I do think Chastain's a little bit of a long shot. I've heard pretty confident reports that he's going to end up with colleague racing in the Xfinity Series. And the 37 car, while it would be nice to see Chastain in a semi-decent Cup ride, I think Chastain really believes he can get a good Cup ride here in a couple of years. I think Chastain would be open to biding his time, running well, running for a championship in Xfinity Series, and maybe in a year or two he could end up with Ganassi. I think that's what he's really hoping for. He could end up, you never know, he could end up at Hendrick Motorsports. I think if I'm Chastain, I'd wait a year or two to ensure that I get a top Cup ride rather than take this first mediocre option. So I do think Daniel Hemrick's a good choice because he's coming from a Chevy team, could end up with another Chevy team there, and I don't know, I think that would be a decent choice. Remember, that 37 still has sponsorship lined up. Kroger and their affiliates are still there, so whoever gets that 37 doesn't necessarily have to bring a lot of their own sponsorship. But anyway, thank you guys for your responses on that one. I enjoyed reading those. I'd like to know what the Groovy Gang thinks on Twitter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can be a part of the next poll. You can also chime in on any major news topics, any trending things like that. I always like reading what people have to tweet at me, usually. Anyway, though, but that's all I got to talk about on this episode. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. You can also follow me on Instagram. Thanks a ton. Of course, a big thank you, of course, to my Patreon supporters. Michael Harrison, at G was the Stars, Cameron James, John Koblenz, Jason R. Long, Wesley Donaldson, Isaac Dennison, Mika Suzuki, iFantasyRace.com, TheRacingInsiders.com, Matthew Koulopoulos, Pepe Lucius, Jeremy Conkling, Emilio Garcia, Joey DiMachino, Sky Racing Forums, Bryce Schumacher, Scott McNew, Colton Austin, Bradley Pelletier. Sorry, so many names, so little time. Thank you guys a ton for supporting the show, supporting Out of the Groove. I couldn't do this without the support I get from you guys every single week, every single month. Really means a ton. So thank you. Yeah, this started out as a pretty slow news week, and then tons of announcements. Christopher Bell earlier this week, and now this. Who saw this coming? I know I certainly didn't, but that's what we love NASCAR for. It can be unpredictable, even when they're not racing. Even the off-the-track stuff can be pretty exciting. I think this thrives. I think this is good for NASCAR, this off-the-track engagement. I think the NBA, the NFL, free agency is such a big deal. They get a ton of buzz around that. I like that NASCAR has a little bit of this as well. I think it's good for the sport. It's good to keep interest high. But anyway, thanks for watching this episode. I'll be back probably later this week with another episode. We've still got some other kind of hot topics to discuss soon, so I will be back very soon. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.